When my husband Marcus left me stranded at the Grand Meridian Hotel with nothing but the clothes on my back, laughing as he drove away with his mistress, he had no idea that I had secretly purchased the entire luxury hotel chain 3 months earlier. What he thought was the ultimate humiliation would become his greatest nightmare, as the helpless wife he abandoned was actually the woman who now controlled his favorite playground for wealthy elites and clandestine business deals. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Standing in the marble-floored lobby of the Grand Meridian Chicago, watching the taillights of Marcus's Bentley disappear into the November evening, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me, despite the shocking betrayal I had just witnessed. The ornate chandeliers cast golden light across the luxurious space where Chicago's financial elite conducted their most sensitive business dealings, and I realized that this moment represented not my destruction, but rather the beginning of Marcus's comprehensive downfall. My name is Victoria Sterling, and until 3 hours ago, I had been known throughout Chicago's business community as the devoted wife of Marcus Sterling, a prominent investment banker whose charm and social connections had built Sterling Financial into one of the most respected boutiques in the Midwest. For 12 years, I had played the role of the supportive spouse, attending charity galas and corporate events where I smiled graciously while Marcus networked with clients and built the relationships that had made him wealthy and influential. What nobody in our social circle understood, including Marcus himself, was that my apparent dedication to domestic perfection masked a brilliant analytical mind and an entrepreneurial spirit that had been systematically suppressed throughout our marriage. While Marcus believed I spent my days managing household staff and planning dinner parties, I had actually been conducting sophisticated financial research and building a private investment portfolio that had grown to rival his own professional achievements. The Grand Meridian Hotel had become a symbol of everything wrong with my marriage to Marcus. He conducted his most important business meetings in the hotel's private dining rooms, negotiated sensitive deals in the exclusive penthouse suites, and, most painfully, carried on his affair with Jessica Chen, his 32-year-old associate, in the luxury accommodations that catered to Chicago's wealthy elite. For months, I had watched Marcus transform from the ambitious but principled man I had married into someone whose success had corrupted his values and relationships. The hotel represented his new world of moral compromise and personal betrayal, a place where wealthy individuals believed their money insulated them from consequences and accountability. Tonight's confrontation had been building for weeks as I gathered evidence of Marcus's infidelity while simultaneously executing a complex financial strategy that would give me leverage over the institutions and relationships that had enabled his transformation. The evening had begun with what Marcus believed would be a romantic dinner celebrating our 12th wedding anniversary, but I had planned it as the moment when I would finally confront him about his affair and demand honest conversation about our marriage. The restaurant Marcus had chosen was located on the 42nd floor of the Grand Meridian, offering spectacular views of Lake Michigan and the Chicago skyline. He had reserved the most expensive private dining room, the same space where he had been entertaining Jessica for intimate dinners while telling me he was working late on client presentations. As we sat across from each other at the elegantly appointed table, surrounded by crystal stemware and fresh orchids, I had attempted to create an opportunity for honest communication about the problems in our relationship. I spoke carefully about feeling disconnected from his work and social life, expressing concern about the changes I had observed in his personality and priorities over the past 2 years. Marcus's response had been dismissive and condescending, treating my concerns as evidence of emotional instability rather than legitimate observations about his behavior. He suggested that I was becoming paranoid and jealous due to my lack of professional fulfillment, implying that my unhappiness stemmed from my dependence on his success rather than his own choices and actions. When I mentioned that I had been considering returning to work or pursuing independent business interests, Marcus's reaction revealed the depth of his need for control over our relationship. He laughed patronizingly and suggested that I lacked the skills and knowledge necessary for success in the competitive business environment he navigated daily. The conversation had escalated when I presented specific evidence of his affair, including photographs I had commissioned from a private investigator and detailed records of his expenses at hotels and restaurants where he had been meeting Jessica. Instead of expressing remorse or attempting to address the issues in our marriage, Marcus had become angry and accusatory. He claimed that my investigation of his activities represented a violation of his privacy and professional confidentiality, suggesting that I had overstepped appropriate boundaries by monitoring his business relationships. His response revealed a fundamental inability to distinguish between professional networking and personal betrayal, treating his affair as if it were simply another business relationship that I had no right to question. The confrontation had reached its climax when Jessica herself appeared at our table, apparently summoned by Marcus through a text message he had sent while I was speaking. Her presence transformed what I had hoped would be a private conversation about our marriage into a public humiliation designed to demonstrate Marcus's complete disregard for my feelings and our relationship. Jessica's appearance had been calculated to maximize my embarrassment while minimizing any consequences for Marcus's professional reputation. She presented herself as a sophisticated business professional whose relationship with Marcus was based on mutual respect and shared ambitions, implying that I was an outdated impediment to his continued growth and success. The two of them had clearly rehearsed their strategy for handling my discovery of their affair, presenting a united front that portrayed me as an unreasonable obstacle to their happiness, rather than a betrayed spouse deserving consideration and respect. Their coordinated responses suggested that they had been planning this confrontation for some time, waiting for an appropriate moment to transition their relationship from secret affair to public partnership. Marcus had concluded the evening by announcing that he was leaving me for Jessica, and that I should consider our marriage effectively terminated. He suggested that I return to our family home to collect my personal belongings, while he arranged for divorce proceedings that would provide me with a reasonable settlement in exchange for avoiding public controversy that might damage his professional reputation. The ultimate insult had come when Marcus announced that he was not returning to our home that evening and would instead be staying at the hotel with Jessica to begin their new life together. He had suggested that I could find my own transportation back to our house, as he would be needing his car for business purposes the following morning. As they walked away from the table together, leaving me alone with the dinner check and no means of transportation, Marcus had turned back with a cruel smile and suggested that this experience might teach me to appreciate the comfortable life he had provided rather than making unreasonable demands about his personal relationships. The depth of his contempt and the calculated nature of his cruelty had confirmed what I had suspected for months. Marcus viewed me not as a partner deserving respect and consideration, but as a possession he could discard when it became convenient. His willingness to humiliate me publicly demonstrated a complete absence of the love and loyalty that had supposedly formed the foundation of our marriage. But what Marcus failed to understand, despite 12 years of marriage, was that his perception of me as a dependent and naive housewife bore no relationship to my actual capabilities and resources. While he had been building his career and conducting his affair, I had been developing my own expertise and accumulating assets that would soon transform the power dynamic between us completely. The private investment portfolio I had been building throughout our marriage had grown to over $40 million through careful analysis of real estate markets, emerging technology companies, and overlooked value opportunities that my analytical background had trained me to identify. My success had been enabled by the same social connections that Marcus believed were exclusively his domain, as many of his business associates had come to respect my insights and judgment during casual conversations at the networking events I had attended as his wife. 3 months earlier, when the Grand Meridian hotel chain had encountered financial difficulties due to management problems and changing market conditions, I had recognized an opportunity to acquire valuable assets at a substantial discount while gaining influence over an institution that represented everything I found objectionable about Chicago's business elite culture. The acquisition had required sophisticated financial structuring and careful coordination with institutional investors, but my analysis had identified the hotel chain as an undervalued asset with enormous potential for improvement under better management. More importantly, gaining control of the Grand Meridian would give me leverage over the business relationships and social networks that had enabled Marcus's success while excluding me from meaningful participation. The purchase had been completed through a series of shell companies and investment partnerships that concealed my involvement while providing the capital and expertise necessary for a successful takeover. The existing management had been retained to ensure operational continuity, but key strategic decisions now required my approval as the majority stakeholder. As I sat alone in the restaurant where Marcus had attempted to humiliate me, I realized that his cruelty had provided me with the perfect opportunity to reveal my hidden strength while demonstrating the consequences of his assumption that I was powerless and dependent. The man who believed he had discarded an inconvenient wife was about to discover that he had made an enemy of someone with the resources and motivation to disrupt every aspect of his carefully constructed life. The evening that Marcus intended as my ultimate humiliation would instead become the beginning of his education about the woman he had never bothered to understand. The helpless wife he had abandoned would soon reveal herself as a formidable adversary whose patience and strategic thinking had prepared her for exactly this moment of reckoning. Standing in the lobby of the hotel I now owned, surrounded by the luxury and privilege that Marcus considered his natural environment, I felt a sense of anticipation rather than despair. Tomorrow would bring the first phase of a carefully planned response that would teach Marcus about the true cost of betrayal, while demonstrating that some people should never be underestimated. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The woman who had been dismissed as naive and dependent was about to become the architect of a transformation that would affect not only Marcus and Jessica, but the entire network of relationships and institutions that had enabled their arrogance and cruelty. The Grand Meridian Hotel would become the stage for a demonstration of what happens when genuine intelligence and authentic values confront privilege and corruption. As I walked toward the elevator that would take me to the penthouse suite had reserved for myself, I began composing the communications that would initiate the next phase of my strategy. Marcus believed he had won this evening's confrontation, but he was about to learn that his greatest victory was actually the beginning of his most comprehensive defeat. The abandoned wife was about to become something much more dangerous. A woman with unlimited resources, detailed knowledge of her target's vulnerabilities, and absolutely nothing left to lose. Marcus's attempt to humiliate me had freed me from any remaining obligation to protect his interests or preserve our relationship, creating the perfect conditions for the kind of strategic response that would reshape his understanding of power and consequences. Tomorrow would begin with phone calls to key stakeholders and business partners who would be very interested to learn about the new ownership structure at their favorite meeting place. The hotel that had been Marcus's sanctuary was about to become the instrument of his education about respect, accountability, and the dangers of underestimating someone whose intelligence had been systematically dismissed and ignored. The Grand Meridian Hotel had been the symbol of everything wrong with my marriage to Marcus Sterling. Soon, it would become the foundation for building something much better in its place. The penthouse suite at the Grand Meridian Chicago offered a commanding view of the city that Marcus had always considered his domain. But as I settled into the Italian leather armchair beside the floor-to-ceiling windows, I realized that his perspective had been fundamentally limited by his inability to see beyond his own immediate interests. The light stretching toward the horizon represented not just geographical territory, but networks of relationships, business opportunities, and influence that I had been quietly cultivating while he assumed I was merely decorating our home and attending social functions. My first priority was establishing communication with the management team that now reported to me as the hotel chain's majority owner, while maintaining the confidentiality that had protected my investment strategy. Throughout the acquisition process, the financial structure I had created allowed me to exercise operational control through a series of intermediary companies, preserving the appearance that institutional investors were driving strategic decisions while ensuring that my personal involvement remained undetectable to casual observers. James Morrison, the chief executive officer of Grand Meridian Holdings, had been expecting my call since the ownership transition had been completed 3 months earlier. Our previous conversations had established clear protocols for communication and decision-making that protected my anonymity while ensuring responsive management of strategic issues. James understood that his new principal investor preferred to operate behind the scenes, exercising influence through carefully crafted directives rather than public involvement in operational matters. The conversation that evening focused on implementing immediate changes to hotel policies and procedures that would demonstrate new management priorities while creating accountability standards that had been absent under previous ownership. I outlined specific requirements for customer service excellence, employee empowerment, and ethical business practices that would transform the Grand Meridian from a playground for wealthy elites into an institution that reflected genuine hospitality values. The most important immediate change involved revising the policies governing privacy and discretion in guest services, particularly regarding the private dining rooms and penthouse suites that Marcus and his associates used for sensitive business, meetings, and personal activities. While the hotel would continue providing excellent service to all guests, the new standards would require transparent documentation of all services provided and clear protocols for handling requests that might involve illegal or unethical activities. James expressed enthusiasm for these changes, explaining that many staff members had been uncomfortable with the previous management's willingness to facilitate questionable activities in exchange for premium payments from high-profile guests. The new policies would empower employees to provide excellent service while maintaining professional and ethical standards that had been systematically compromised under the previous ownership structure. The implementation timeline for these changes was aggressive but achievable, with most new policies taking effect within 48 hours and comprehensive staff training completed within 2 weeks. The speed of implementation was essential for establishing new expectations before Marcus and his associates attempted to resume their normal patterns of behavior at the hotel. My second priority involved activating the network of business relationships I had been developing throughout my marriage to Marcus, leveraging the credibility and insights I had gained during countless networking events and social gatherings, where I had been dismissed as merely a supportive spouse rather than an independent thinker with valuable perspectives. Dr. Patricia Williams, a prominent business consultant who specialized in organizational transformation, had become a trusted advisor during our conversations at various charity functions, where we had discovered shared interests in sustainable business practices and social responsibility. Patricia had always treated me as an intellectual equal, despite Marcus's tendency to interrupt our conversations with condescending explanations of topics he assumed I could not understand. The phone conversation with Patricia revealed that she had suspected for some time that I possessed capabilities and interests that extended far beyond the domestic role I appeared to fulfill in my marriage to Marcus. Her consulting firm had been monitoring the Grand Meridian acquisition through publicly available financial documents, and she had recognized patterns in the investment strategy that suggested sophisticated analytical thinking and strategic planning. Patricia's insights confirmed my analysis that the hotel chain represented significant potential for improvement under better management, particularly regarding employee satisfaction, customer service quality, and community engagement. Her firm specialized in exactly the type of organizational transformation that would be required to implement my vision for the Grand Meridian's future direction and operational excellence. The collaboration we outlined would provide comprehensive support for the management changes I wanted to implement, while ensuring that the transformation reflected best practices in hospitality management and corporate social responsibility. Patricia's involvement would also provide credibility and expertise that would accelerate acceptance of new policies among staff members and business partners who might otherwise resist change. The third component of my immediate strategy involved contacting several key business leaders who had been providing informal advice and support for my private investment activities, revealing to them that I was now positioned to pursue larger-scale projects that could generate both financial returns and positive social impact within Chicago's business community. Michael Chen, the founder of Chen Capital Management and one of Chicago's most respected investment advisors, had been serving as an unofficial mentor since we had been introduced at a fundraising gala 3 years earlier. Michael had recognized my analytical abilities during conversations about market trends and investment opportunities, often seeking my perspectives on deals he was evaluating, despite Marcus's attempts to redirect discussions toward topics he considered more appropriate for social settings. The revelation that I had successfully acquired the Grand Meridian hotel chain surprised Michael, but did not shock him, as he had observed my increasingly sophisticated understanding of complex financial transactions and strategic business planning. He expressed admiration for the discretion and patience I had demonstrated in executing such a significant acquisition while maintaining complete confidentiality about my activities and intentions. Michael's immediate reaction focused on the strategic opportunities that hotel ownership would create for pursuing additional investments and business relationships within Chicago's hospitality and real estate sectors. His analysis confirmed my own assessment that the Grand Meridian represented not just a valuable asset, but a platform for building broader influence and creating positive change within industries that had been dominated by short-term profit maximization rather than sustainable value creation. The fourth element of my response strategy involved implementing immediate security measures that would protect my personal safety, while ensuring that Marcus could not interfere with my business activities or attempt to claim ownership of assets that I had acquired independently during our marriage. The private investigator who had documented Marcus's affair, Rebecca Torres, had extensive experience in personal security and asset protection for high-net-worth individuals facing domestic disputes. Rebecca's assessment of the situation emphasized the importance of maintaining detailed documentation about the timeline and sources of funding for my hotel acquisition, ensuring that any legal challenges Marcus might pursue would be met with comprehensive evidence of my independent financial activities. The shell companies and investment partnerships I had used to structure the purchase had been designed specifically to prevent claims that marital assets had been used inappropriately or that Marcus had any legitimate interest in my business activities. The security protocols Rebecca recommended included immediate changes to my personal banking and communication systems, establishment of secure office space for conducting business activities, and coordination with law enforcement regarding potential threats or harassment from Marcus or his associates. While I did not anticipate physical danger, Rebecca emphasized that men who felt their power and control threatened often responded unpredictably to situations they could not manage through traditional intimidation tactics. The fifth component of my strategic response involved reaching out to several other women in similar situations, business leaders whose capabilities had been systematically underestimated by their spouses or business partners, creating opportunities for mutual support and collaboration on projects that reflected our shared values and expertise. Sarah Mitchell, the founder of Mitchell Development Group and one of Chicago's most successful female entrepreneurs, had built her real estate empire while married to a prominent attorney who had consistently dismissed her business activities as hobbies that distracted from her domestic responsibilities. Sarah's success had been achieved through the same combination of analytical thinking, strategic patience, and careful relationship building that had enabled my own accomplishments. The conversation with Sarah revealed that she had been following the Grand Meridian acquisition through industry publications and had suspected that the new ownership represented an opportunity for positive change within Chicago's hospitality sector. Sarah expressed interest in exploring collaboration opportunities that could leverage both our resources and expertise to pursue larger-scale development projects that emphasized sustainable design and community benefit. Sarah's enthusiasm for partnering with me reflected her understanding that successful businesswomen often needed to create their own networks and support systems, as traditional business organizations frequently excluded or marginalized female leaders regardless of their demonstrated capabilities and achievements. The collaboration we began planning would provide both personal support and professional opportunities while advancing our shared commitment to ethical business practices. The sixth element of my immediate response focused on communicating with Marcus's business associates and clients, not to create unnecessary conflict or damage his professional reputation, but to establish my independent credibility and ensure that his inevitable attempts to discredit me would be met with skepticism, rather than automatic acceptance. David Thompson, a senior partner at one of Chicago's most prestigious law firms and a frequent guest at the Grand Meridian, had often sought my opinions about market trends and business opportunities during social events where Marcus was networking with potential clients. David had consistently treated me as a knowledgeable peer rather than simply Marcus's wife, often continuing our conversations long after Marcus had moved on to other networking opportunities. The phone conversation with David confirmed that he had observed the tension in my marriage to Marcus and had suspected that my apparent contentment with domestic life masked frustration with limited opportunities for independent achievement. David expressed genuine surprise at learning about my hotel acquisition, but immediately understood the strategic thinking that had made such an investment attractive given current market conditions. David's reaction was particularly important because his law firm represented several of Marcus's most important clients, giving him insight into business relationships that might be affected by our marital problems. His willingness to maintain our professional relationship independent of my connection to Marcus would provide credibility and support if Marcus attempted to interfere with my business activities through his professional network. The seventh component of my strategy involved establishing clear boundaries regarding any future contact with Marcus, ensuring that our inevitable interactions during divorce proceedings would be conducted through appropriate legal channels while preventing him from using emotional manipulation or intimidation tactics to influence my business decisions or personal choices. Catherine Walsh, a family law attorney who specialized in high-asset divorce cases involving business owners and entrepreneurs, had been recommended by several women in my social circle who had successfully navigated similar situations. Catherine's approach emphasized protecting her clients' financial interests while maintaining dignity and avoiding unnecessary conflict that could damage professional reputations or family relationships. The initial consultation with Catherine confirmed that my careful documentation of Marcus's infidelity and my independent acquisition of business assets had created strong foundations for achieving favorable divorce terms while protecting my interests from any claims Marcus might pursue. The financial structure I had created for the hotel acquisition would prevent Marcus from claiming any ownership interest, while ensuring that my assets remained protected throughout the legal proceedings. Catherine's analysis also emphasized the importance of maintaining professional behavior and avoiding any actions that could be characterized as vindictive or retaliatory, even though Marcus's conduct clearly justified anger and desire for consequences. The most effective approach would involve focusing on building my independent life and business activities while allowing legal processes to address the practical issues surrounding our divorce. As I concluded these initial conversations and began planning the next phase of my response to Marcus's betrayal, I realized that his attempt to humiliate and abandon me had actually created the perfect conditions for demonstrating my independence and capabilities. The freedom from maintaining appearances and protecting his interests would allow me to pursue opportunities and relationships that had been constrained by my commitment to our marriage. The penthouse suite that had become my temporary residence offered more than just luxurious accommodations. It provided a strategic headquarters for implementing changes that would transform both the Grand Meridian and my own life, according to values that Marcus had never understood or supported. The hotel that had symbolized his corruption and betrayal would become the foundation for building something that reflected integrity, excellence, and genuine respect for others. The woman Marcus had dismissed as naive and dependent was about to demonstrate that his perception had been not just wrong, but dangerously incomplete. The strategic thinking and business acumen I had been developing while he assumed I was merely managing household affairs would now be applied to creating consequences that would educate him about the true cost of his arrogance and cruelty. Standing at the windows overlooking the city where Marcus believed he held influence and power, I felt a profound sense of anticipation rather than anxiety about the challenges ahead. The next morning would begin a transformation that would affect not only our personal relationship, but the broader network of business connections and social relationships that had enabled his success while excluding me from meaningful participation. The abandoned wife would soon reveal herself as a formidable business leader whose patience and preparation had created opportunities that Marcus could never have imagined. His greatest humiliation would become my most significant achievement, proving that some people should never be underestimated regardless of how powerless they might appear to those who lack the vision to recognize genuine capability and determination. The transformation of the Grand Meridian began at precisely 6 o'clock the following morning, when James Morrison convened an emergency management meeting to implement the operational changes I had authorized during our late-night conversation. The speed and comprehensiveness of these modifications would send a clear message throughout Chicago's business community that new leadership had assumed control of an institution that many had considered unchangeable in its catering to wealthy, elite preferences. The first noticeable change involved the complete restructuring of guest services protocols, particularly regarding the private dining rooms and penthouse suites where Marcus and his associates had conducted their most sensitive business activities. Under the previous management, these spaces had operated with minimal oversight and maximum discretion, allowing guests to engage in activities that often violated both hotel policies and legal standards, while staff members were instructed to ignore anything that might create liability or reputational issues. The new protocols required detailed documentation of all services provided in private spaces, with mandatory reporting procedures for any requests that might involve illegal activities, harassment of staff members, or violations of professional conduct standards. These changes were presented to the staff as quality assurance measures designed to protect both guests and employees, while ensuring that the Grand Meridian maintained the highest standards of professional hospitality service. Maria Rodriguez, the head of guest services and a 15-year veteran of the Grand Meridian staff, expressed immediate enthusiasm for these changes during the morning briefing. She explained that many employees had been uncomfortable with the previous management's willingness to facilitate questionable activities in exchange for premium payments, particularly incidents involving harassment of female staff members and pressure to ignore obvious violations of professional conduct standards. The implementation of these new standards would require comprehensive training for all guest services personnel, but Maria emphasized that most staff members had been hoping for exactly these types of changes. The previous management had created an environment where employees felt pressured to compromise their professional integrity in order to satisfy demands from high-profile guests who assumed their wealth entitled them to special treatment that violated basic ethical standards. The second major change involved establishing new partnerships with local organizations focused on community development and social responsibility, transforming the Grand Meridian from an exclusive enclave for Chicago's elite into an institution that contributed positively to the broader community while maintaining its commitment to excellence in hospitality services. Dr. Patricia Williams arrived at the hotel shortly after the management meeting concluded, bringing a team of organizational development specialists who would conduct comprehensive assessments of current operations while designing training programs that would support the cultural transformation I envisioned. Patricia's involvement provided immediate credibility for the changes while ensuring that the transition reflected best practices in hospitality management and corporate social responsibility. The assessment process would require several weeks to complete, But Patricia's initial observations confirmed my analysis that the hotel possessed exceptional potential under better leadership. The physical facilities were maintained to the highest standards. The staff demonstrated genuine commitment to service excellence, and the location provided unique opportunities for serving both business travelers and community organizations that had been excluded under previous management policies. Patricia's team immediately began conducting confidential interviews with staff members at all levels, gathering insights about operational challenges and opportunities for improvement that had been ignored by previous management. These conversations revealed widespread frustration with policies that prioritized short-term revenue generation over sustainable service quality and employee satisfaction. The third component of the morning's implementation involved activating the security and legal protections that would prevent Marcus from interfering with my business activities or attempting to claim ownership of assets I had acquired independently. Rebecca Torres had coordinated with the hotel's security staff to ensure that my presence and activities remained confidential while establishing protocols for handling any attempts by Marcus or his associates to gather information about the ownership changes. The legal documentation prepared by Catherine Walsh established clear boundaries regarding Marcus's access to information about my business activities, while providing comprehensive evidence that the hotel acquisition had been funded entirely through my independent investment portfolio. This protection would be essential if Marcus attempted to challenge the divorce proceedings or claim that marital assets had been used inappropriately for business purposes. Catherine had also prepared cease and desist letters that would be delivered to Marcus if he attempted to interfere with my business relationships or made false statements about my capabilities or financial resources to potential partners or investors. These legal protections would ensure that any retaliation attempts would result in immediate consequences while preserving my ability to build business relationships without harassment or intimidation. The fourth element of the implementation focused on establishing my new office headquarters within the Grand Meridian's executive suite, creating a professional environment where I could conduct business activities while maintaining oversight of the hotel's transformation process. The space had been reconfigured to provide state-of-the-art technology and communication systems that would support sophisticated financial analysis and strategic planning activities. The office design reflected my commitment to transparency and collaboration, with conference facilities that could accommodate meetings with investors, consultants, and community partners while maintaining the confidentiality necessary for sensitive business discussions. The space would serve as both operational headquarters and a symbol of the new leadership approach that emphasized professional excellence and ethical business practices. Sarah Mitchell visited the new offices during the afternoon, bringing architectural plans for potential collaboration projects that could leverage both our resources and expertise. Sarah's development firm specialized in sustainable design and community-focused projects that aligned perfectly with my vision for expanding beyond hospitality services into broader real estate development and social impact initiatives. The collaboration we outlined would begin with small-scale projects that demonstrated our shared commitment to responsible development practices while building credibility for larger initiatives that could transform underutilized properties into assets that served both financial and community development objectives. Sarah's enthusiasm for these projects reflected her understanding that successful female entrepreneurs often needed to create their own opportunities rather than waiting for inclusion in traditional business networks. Meanwhile, Marcus was beginning to discover that his comfortable routines and assumed privileges at the Grand Meridian were no longer available under the new management structure. His first indication that changes had occurred came when he attempted to reserve his usual private dining room for a business lunch with potential clients, only to be informed that new policies required advance approval and detailed documentation for all private event requests. The reservations manager, following the new protocols established that morning, explained that private dining facilities were now subject to enhanced oversight procedures designed to ensure compliance with hotel policies and legal standards. All guests were welcome to utilize these premium services, But the request process now included requirements for identifying the nature of business activities and confirming that proposed activities aligned with the hotel's professional conduct standards. Marcus's reaction to these new requirements revealed his assumption that his status as a long-term customer entitled him to special treatment that bypassed normal hotel policies. His demand to speak with senior management about the unnecessary bureaucracy demonstrated his inability to understand that the changes represented fundamental shifts in institutional priorities, rather than temporary inconveniences that could be resolved through complaint and pressure. James Morrison's conversation with Marcus carefully avoided revealing any information about the ownership changes, while firmly explaining that the new policies applied to all guests without exception. James emphasized that the Grand Meridian remained committed to providing excellent service to all customers, while ensuring that all activities conducted on hotel premises complied with professional and legal standards that protected both guests and staff members. Marcus's frustration with these explanations led him to demand contact information for the hotel's owners, assuming that his business relationships and social connections would enable him to bypass policies that he considered inappropriate restrictions on his activities. James politely explained that ownership information was confidential, but that guest feedback could be submitted through appropriate channels for management review and response. The second indication of changed circumstances came when Marcus attempted to access the penthouse suite where he had planned to continue his relationship with Jessica Chen while avoiding the complications of returning to our family home. The suite that had been available for his exclusive use under previous management arrangements was now fully booked with legitimate business travelers, and new reservations required the same advance planning and documentation procedures that applied to all hotel accommodations. The desk clerk explained that the Grand Meridian had implemented new reservation systems designed to maximize occupancy while ensuring fair access to premium accommodations for all guests. The informal arrangements that had previously allowed certain customers to reserve space without advance notice were no longer available, as the hotel was committed to transparent and equitable service delivery for all customers. Marcus's demand for preferential treatment based on his history as a valued customer was met with polite but firm explanation that the new management prioritized service quality and fairness over special arrangements that might disadvantage other guests. The clerk offered to place Marcus on a waiting list for future availability, while suggesting that advance planning would ensure accommodation of his business and personal travel needs. The third discovery occurred when Marcus attempted to conduct a sensitive business meeting in one of the hotel's smaller conference rooms, only to find that the new documentation requirements made it impossible to maintain the discretion that had previously characterized his most questionable business dealings. The enhanced oversight procedures meant that all conference room activities were subject to monitoring and reporting requirements that could expose illegal or unethical business practices to regulatory scrutiny. Marcus's clients, several of whom relied on the Grand Meridian's previous willingness to facilitate sensitive activities without documentation, expressed concern about the changed environment and suggested finding alternative venues for future meetings. The loss of this secured meeting space represented a significant disruption to business relationships that depended on confidentiality and minimal oversight for their continued operation. The cumulative effect of these changes began to create genuine anxiety for Marcus as he realized that an institution he had considered completely reliable and controllable was no longer available for his personal and professional needs. His attempts to understand the source of these changes led him to make increasingly aggressive demands for information about management decisions and ownership structure. Marcus's escalating frustration with the hotel's new policies led him to contact several business associates who had also relied on the Grand Meridian's previous management approach, hoping to organize collective pressure that would reverse the changes and restore the informal arrangements that had served their interests. However, these conversations revealed that other customers were actually responding positively to the enhanced professionalism and transparent service delivery that characterized the new management approach. Several of Marcus's business contacts expressed appreciation for the improved service quality and the clear policies that eliminated the ambiguity and potential liability issues that had concerned them about previous arrangements. The new standards provided protection for legitimate business activities while creating accountability that actually enhanced the hotel's reputation and reliability for professional purposes. David Thompson, the law firm partner who had maintained respectful professional relationships with me despite Marcus's dismissive behavior, contacted Marcus to express concern about his increasingly aggressive demands for special treatment at the Grand Meridian. David explained that the new management approach reflected industry best practices that protected both customers and service providers, while maintaining the excellence in hospitality that made the hotel valuable for legitimate business purposes. David's conversation with Marcus included subtle warnings about the reputational risks of being perceived as someone who demanded special treatment that violated professional conduct standards. David suggested that Marcus might benefit from adapting to the new environment rather than attempting to pressure management into compromising policies that served the interests of the broader customer base and business community. The most significant development occurred when Marcus discovered that Jessica Chen was also encountering difficulties with the changed policies at the Grand Meridian, as her attempts to arrange informal meetings and entertainment activities were now subject to the same documentation and oversight requirements that applied to all guests. The discretion and flexibility that had enabled their affair was no longer available under management that prioritized transparency and accountability. Jessica's frustration with these constraints led to tension between her and Marcus, as both realized that their relationship had been facilitated by special arrangements that were no longer available. The informal privileges they had enjoyed were revealed to be dependent on institutional policies that prioritized short-term revenue over professional conduct standards and legal compliance. As evening approached, Marcus found himself in the unprecedented position of being unable to access the services and accommodations that he had considered guaranteed privileges rather than earned benefits. The hotel that had served as his sanctuary and operational headquarters was now operating according to standards that made his questionable activities impossible, while his legitimate business needs could be accommodated through transparent and professional service delivery. The realization that fundamental changes had occurred at an institution he had considered completely reliable and controllable created genuine anxiety about the stability of other business relationships and social connections that he had assumed would always be available to serve his interests. The Grand Meridian had been more than just a convenient location. It had been a symbol of his status and influence within Chicago's business community. Standing in the lobby where I had been abandoned the previous evening, Marcus was beginning to understand that his comfortable assumptions about power and privilege were no longer supported by the institutions and relationships he had taken for granted. The changes at the Grand Meridian represented something much larger than inconvenient new policies. They signaled a fundamental shift in expectations and standards that would require him to operate according to principles of accountability and transparency that his previous success had allowed him to avoid. The man who had driven away laughing 12 hours earlier was now confronting the first evidence that his actions might have consequences that extended far beyond his personal relationship with me. The hotel that had enabled his worst behavior was now operating according to values that would make such behavior impossible, while the wife he had dismissed as powerless was nowhere to be seen despite the obvious connection between her abandonment and the comprehensive changes that were disrupting his carefully constructed routine. Marcus Sterling spent the following morning attempting to understand the systematic changes that had transformed the Grand Meridian from his reliable sanctuary into an institution that operated according to unfamiliar standards of accountability and transparency. His investigation began with phone calls to business associates who had previously relied on the hotel's discretionary services, hoping to discover whether the policy changes represented temporary adjustments or fundamental shifts in management philosophy. The conversations revealed a disturbing pattern of confusion among his professional network, as other high-profile guests encountered similar restrictions and documentation requirements that made their previous informal arrangements impossible to maintain. Several associates expressed genuine surprise at Marcus's level of frustration with the changes, noting that the enhanced professionalism and clear service standards actually improved their confidence in conducting legitimate business activities at the hotel. Robert Harrison, a senior partner at a prestigious accounting firm who had frequently utilized the Grand Meridian's private conference facilities for sensitive client meetings, explained that his firm had actually welcomed the new documentation, procedures because they provided liability protection, and demonstrated the hotel's commitment to maintaining professional conduct standards. Robert suggested that Marcus's resistance to these changes might reflect practices that would not withstand scrutiny under appropriate oversight procedures. This conversation forced Marcus to confront the uncomfortable possibility that his anger about the policy changes stemmed not from legitimate concerns about service quality, but from his dependence on arrangements that had enabled questionable business activities. The realization that other professionals considered the changes beneficial created anxiety about whether his own business practices could withstand the enhanced transparency that characterized the new management approach. Marcus's next investigative effort focused on identifying the source of the ownership and management changes at the Grand Meridian, assuming that understanding the motivation behind the transformation would provide insights into potential methods for reversing or circumventing the new policies. His initial research through public business records revealed only that the hotel chain had been acquired by a consortium of institutional investors who preferred to operate through intermediary management companies. The complexity of the financial structure that had facilitated the acquisition suggested sophisticated strategic planning and substantial resources, indicating that the new owners possessed both the capability and commitment necessary for implementing comprehensive operational changes. The anonymity of the ultimate decision-makers meant that Marcus could not leverage his social connections or business relationships to influence management policies through direct pressure or negotiation. His attempts to gather information through informal channels within the hotel staff met with polite but firm responses that demonstrated the comprehensive nature of the management transition. Employees at all levels had been trained to maintain confidentiality about ownership structure and strategic decisions, while focusing their communication on service delivery and customer satisfaction within the framework of clearly established policies and procedures. Marcus's frustration with these responses led him to escalate his investigation through more aggressive approaches, including demands for meetings with senior management and threats to move his business activities to competing hotels that might provide more accommodating service arrangements. These tactics revealed his fundamental misunderstanding of the changed power dynamics and his continued assumption that his customer status entitled him to special treatment that violated normal business practices. James Morrison's response to Marcus's increasingly demanding behavior demonstrated the professional competence and ethical foundation that characterized the new management approach. James explained that the Grand Meridian remained committed to providing excellent service to all customers, while maintaining standards that protected both guests and staff members from liability and reputational risks that had previously created problems for the hotel and its business relationships. The conversation concluded with James offering to arrange alternative accommodations and services that would meet Marcus's legitimate business needs while complying with the hotel's enhanced professional conduct standards. This response effectively neutralized Marcus's threats while demonstrating that the new management possessed both the confidence and resources necessary for maintaining their principles, despite pressure from customers who preferred the previous arrangements. Meanwhile, my own professional emergence was accelerating through strategic meetings with business leaders who had observed my analytical capabilities during social events, but had never previously had opportunities to engage with me on substantive business matters. The revelation of my hotel chain acquisition had generated genuine interest in my investment philosophy and strategic thinking among Chicago's financial community, creating opportunities for collaboration and partnership that had been unimaginable while I remained married to Marcus. Michael Chen arranged an introduction with Dr. Amanda Foster, the Chief Investment Officer for the Chicago Teachers Pension Fund, and one of the most respected institutional investors in the Midwest. Amanda had been seeking opportunities to diversify the pension fund's real estate portfolio while supporting development projects that served community needs rather than simply maximizing short-term returns for wealthy investors. The meeting with Amanda revealed remarkable alignment between her investment objectives and my vision for transforming the Grand Meridian into a model for socially responsible hospitality management. The pension fund possessed substantial resources for supporting expansion of the hotel chain, while my operational improvements could provide stable returns that served the long-term interests of fund beneficiaries who valued both financial performance and positive community impact. Amanda's analysis of the Grand Meridian acquisition confirmed my assessment that the hotel chain represented exceptional value under competent management, particularly given the potential for expanding into underserved markets where quality hospitality services could support economic development and business growth. The partnership we began developing would provide capital for strategic expansion while ensuring that growth reflected principles of sustainability and community benefit rather than simple profit maximization. The collaboration with Amanda also provided access to additional institutional investors who shared similar values and investment objectives, creating opportunities for developing a comprehensive network of partners who could support larger-scale projects that reflected our shared commitment to responsible business practices. These relationships represented far more than financial arrangements. They constituted a community of leaders who understood that sustainable success required integration of financial performance with social responsibility. Dr. Patricia Williams completed her initial assessment of the Grand Meridian's operational potential during this period, presenting recommendations that validated my strategic vision while identifying specific opportunities for improvement that would enhance both profitability and community impact. Patricia's analysis demonstrated that the previous management had significantly underutilized the hotel's potential by focusing exclusively on premium pricing for elite customers while ignoring opportunities for broader market engagement. The transformation plan Patricia developed included comprehensive staff development programs that would enhance service quality while creating career advancement opportunities for employees who had been systematically undervalued by previous management. These improvements would generate both better customer satisfaction and reduced staff turnover, creating operational efficiencies that would support expanded services and enhanced profitability. Patricia's recommendations also included community engagement initiatives that would establish the Grand Meridian as a civic leader rather than simply a business that served wealthy elites. These programs would include partnerships with local educational institutions, support for small business development, and facilities for community organizations that had previously been excluded from access to high-quality meeting and event spaces. The implementation of these recommendations would require substantial investment in staff training and facility improvements. But Patricia's financial analysis demonstrated that the enhanced reputation and market positioning would generate revenue growth that would justify the expenditures while creating sustainable competitive advantages that could not be easily replicated by competitors focused solely on profit maximization. Sarah Mitchell expanded our collaboration during this period by introducing me to additional female business leaders who had built successful enterprises while facing similar challenges regarding recognition and respect within male-dominated industries. These relationships provided both personal support and professional opportunities, while creating potential for collaborative projects that leveraged our combined resources and expertise. Jennifer Walsh, the founder of Walsh Construction and one of Chicago's most successful female contractors, had built her company by focusing on sustainable building practices and community development projects that other firms considered insufficiently profitable. Jennifer's approach to business development reflected values similar to my own, emphasizing long-term relationship building and social responsibility over short-term profit maximization and competitive advantage. The meeting with Jennifer revealed potential for collaboration on facility improvements and expansion projects that would support the Grand Meridian's transformation, while advancing broader objectives regarding sustainable development and community benefit. Jennifer's expertise in environmentally responsible construction methods would ensure that any expansion reflected best practices in energy efficiency and environmental stewardship. Jennifer also provided insights into the challenges and opportunities facing female entrepreneurs in Chicago's business community, sharing strategies for building credibility and developing client relationships while maintaining authenticity and professional integrity. Her success demonstrated that principled business practices could generate both financial returns and personal satisfaction, while contributing positively to community development and social progress. The networking opportunities created through these relationships enabled me to establish my professional identity independent of my previous connection to Marcus, demonstrating competencies and achievements that had been systematically overlooked while I fulfilled the role of supportive spouse. The business leaders I encountered expressed genuine surprise at my analytical capabilities and strategic thinking, having previously encountered me only in social contexts, where Marcus's behavior had obscured my independent qualifications and perspectives. These professional relationships also provided protection against any attempts Marcus might make to discredit my business activities or claim that my success was dependent on connections or resources that derived from our marriage. The evidence of my independent capabilities and the respect I had earned from established business leaders would counter any narrative that portrayed me as an incompetent spouse who had succeeded through deception or manipulation. Dr. Williams introduced me to Elena Rodriguez, the president of the Chicago Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and a prominent advocate for minority business development. Elena had been working to create opportunities for underrepresented entrepreneurs to access capital and business development resources that had been traditionally controlled by networks that excluded women and minorities from meaningful participation. The conversation with Elena revealed potential for the Grand Meridian to serve as a platform for supporting minority business development through preferential contracting, mentorship programs, and facilities for networking events that would connect emerging entrepreneurs with established business leaders. These initiatives would create positive community impact while generating goodwill and market differentiation that would enhance the hotel's reputation and customer loyalty. Elena's involvement would also provide access to grant funding and public sector partnerships that could support expansion of community engagement programs while demonstrating the Grand Meridian's commitment to social responsibility and inclusive economic development. These opportunities would create additional revenue streams while advancing objectives that reflected my personal values and long-term vision for the hotel chain's role in community development. As these professional relationships developed and my business activities expanded, Marcus continued his increasingly frustrated attempts to understand and influence the changes at the Grand Meridian. His investigation had revealed the complexity of the ownership structure, but provided no insights into the identity or motivation of the decision-makers who had implemented the policies that disrupted his comfortable routines and business practices. Marcus's growing anxiety about the situation led him to contact private investigators who specialized in corporate research, hoping to identify vulnerabilities or connections that might provide leverage for pressuring the new owners to modify their policies. This escalation demonstrated his inability to accept that his preferences and demands were no longer considered relevant by institutions that had previously accommodated his questionable activities. The investigation Marcus commissioned consumed substantial resources while producing no actionable intelligence about the ownership structure or management decisions that had transformed the Grand Meridian. The financial complexity and legal protections that had been established during the acquisition process effectively prevented unauthorized access to confidential information while maintaining the anonymity that protected my involvement from discovery. Marcus's escalating frustration with these failed investigative efforts began to affect his professional relationships and business activities, as associates observed his unusual preoccupation with a hotel management dispute that appeared to have no direct connection to his financial services business. His inability to move past the situation and adapt to changed circumstances created concerns about his judgment and emotional stability among clients who depended on his analytical objectivity and strategic thinking. The irony of Marcus's situation was becoming apparent to observers who understood that his anger about enhanced accountability and transparency standards suggested business practices that could not withstand appropriate oversight. His resistance to documentation requirements and professional conduct standards raised questions about the integrity of his financial services business and his suitability for managing client assets that required fiduciary responsibility and ethical management. As the week concluded, Marcus found himself in the unprecedented position of being excluded from an institution that he had considered essential to his business operations and social status. While his investigation had revealed no viable options for restoring his previous access and privileges, the Grand Meridian continued operating successfully under management that prioritized service quality and professional conduct over the informal arrangements that had previously accommodated questionable activities. The contrast between Marcus's declining influence and my expanding professional recognition illustrated the fundamental difference between success based on privilege and connections versus achievement derived from competence and integrity. The hotel that had enabled his worst behavior was now operating according to principles that made such behavior impossible, while the woman he had dismissed as powerless was emerging as a respected business leader whose capabilities commanded recognition and respect from Chicago's financial community. The transformative opportunity emerged through Dr. Amanda Foster's introduction to Thomas Reynolds, the Chief Executive Officer of Reynolds International Development, one of the most respected real estate investment firms in North America. Thomas had been monitoring the hospitality sector for acquisition opportunities that aligned with his company's commitment to sustainable development and community-focused investment strategies, making him an ideal partner for the expansion vision I had been developing for the Grand Meridian chain. The initial meeting with Thomas took place in the newly configured executive conference room at the Grand Meridian Chicago, providing him with direct observation of the operational improvements and cultural transformation that had been implemented under my ownership. Thomas arrived with a reputation for analytical rigor and strategic thinking that had enabled Reynolds International to build a portfolio of properties that generated both superior financial returns and measurable positive community impact. Thomas expressed immediate appreciation for the comprehensive nature of the changes I had implemented at the Grand Meridian, noting that the enhanced service standards and professional conduct policies reflected industry best practices that many hospitality companies had been reluctant to adopt due to short-term cost considerations. His analysis confirmed that the improvements would create sustainable competitive advantages while reducing operational risks that had previously exposed the hotel to liability and reputational problems. The presentation I delivered during this meeting outlined my strategic vision for expanding the Grand Meridian brand through selective acquisitions of underperforming properties in secondary markets where quality hospitality services could support economic development while generating attractive returns for investors committed to responsible business practices. The financial projections demonstrated that this approach would create scalable growth opportunities while maintaining the operational excellence and community engagement that differentiated the Grand Meridian from competitors focused solely on profit maximization. Thomas's response revealed that Reynolds International had been developing similar strategies for hospitality sector investment, recognizing that changing consumer preferences and regulatory environments were creating opportunities for companies that prioritized sustainability and social responsibility over traditional approaches that emphasized luxury amenities and premium pricing. The alignment between our strategic thinking created immediate potential for collaboration that could accelerate both companies' growth objectives while advancing shared values regarding community development and environmental stewardship. The partnership structure Thomas proposed would provide Reynolds International with minority ownership positions in Grand Meridian expansion projects, while I maintained operational control and strategic decision-making authority. This arrangement would give me access to Reynolds International's substantial financial resources and development expertise, while preserving my ability to ensure that growth reflected the principles and values that had driven the initial transformation of the hotel chain. The collaboration would begin with a pilot project involving the acquisition and renovation of 3 underperforming hotels in mid-sized cities, where economic development initiatives had created demand for quality business accommodations that could support corporate recruitment and tourism development. These markets had been overlooked by major hospitality chains because of their smaller scale and limited luxury amenities, creating opportunities for the Grand Meridian to establish market leadership through superior service quality and community engagement. Dr. Patricia Williams expanded her consulting role to support the development of operational standards and training programs that would ensure consistent service delivery across multiple properties while adapting to local market conditions and community needs. Patricia's expertise in organizational development would be essential for scaling the management approaches that had proven successful at the Grand Meridian Chicago, while maintaining the flexibility necessary for responding to diverse customer requirements and cultural contexts. The training programs Patricia designed emphasized empowerment of local staff members and engagement with community organizations, creating employment opportunities that provided career advancement potential while building relationships that would generate customer loyalty and positive reputation within each market. These approaches represented fundamental departures from standard hospitality industry practices that typically prioritized cost control and standardized procedures over personalized service and community integration. The financial structure for the expansion required sophisticated coordination between multiple funding sources, including Reynolds International's investment capital, institutional investors arranged through Dr. Amanda Foster's network, and community development financing that Elena Rodriguez had identified through her connections with economic development organizations. This diversified funding approach would reduce financial risk, while ensuring that expansion projects received support from stakeholders who shared commitments to both financial performance and community benefit. Michael Chen provided strategic, financial advisory services for structuring these complex transactions, ensuring that each acquisition created optimal tax efficiency while maintaining transparency and compliance with all regulatory requirements. Michael's expertise in institutional investment management was essential for developing documentation and governance structures that would satisfy the fiduciary obligations of pension fund and endowment investors while preserving operational flexibility necessary for responsive customer service and community engagement. The first acquisition target identified through this collaborative process was the Heritage Inn in Madison, Wisconsin, a historically significant property that had been struggling under management that lacked both financial resources and strategic vision necessary for addressing deferred maintenance and competitive positioning challenges. The hotel possessed exceptional architectural character and optimal location near the University of Wisconsin campus, but previous owners had been unable to capitalize on these advantages due to operational deficiencies and outdated facilities. The due diligence process for the Heritage Inn acquisition revealed substantial potential for improvement through strategic renovation and enhanced management practices, while the purchase price reflected current operational challenges rather than the property's potential value under competent ownership. The transaction would provide an excellent demonstration of the Grand Meridian's ability to transform underperforming assets while generating attractive returns for all stakeholders involved in the financing structure. Sarah Mitchell's construction expertise proved invaluable during the renovation planning process, as her commitment to sustainable building practices aligned perfectly with the environmental stewardship principles that would differentiate Grand Meridian properties from competitors. Sarah's analysis identified opportunities for energy efficiency improvements and accessibility enhancements that would reduce operational costs while creating superior customer experiences and demonstrating corporate social responsibility commitments. The renovation plans Sarah developed incorporated advanced environmental technologies and locally sourced materials that would minimize environmental impact while supporting regional economic development. These approaches required higher initial investment than conventional renovation strategies, but the long-term operational savings and marketing advantages would justify the additional costs while creating demonstration projects that could influence industry standards and practices. Jennifer Walsh's involvement in the construction management ensured that renovation projects would provide opportunities for minority-owned subcontractors and suppliers, advancing economic inclusion objectives while maintaining quality standards. And budget discipline. Jennifer's network of certified minority business enterprises would enable the Grand Meridian expansion to create measurable positive impact within the communities where new properties were developed. Elena Rodriguez coordinated with local economic development organizations to ensure that Grand Meridian properties would contribute to broader community development objectives, including support for local businesses, collaboration with educational institutions, and participation in tourism promotion initiatives. These partnerships would create additional revenue opportunities while building stakeholder relationships that would support long-term success and market positioning. The comprehensive nature of these collaborations demonstrated that the Grand Meridian expansion represented far more than traditional business growth. It constituted a new model for hospitality industry development that integrated financial performance with community development and environmental stewardship. The success of this approach would create precedents that could influence industry practices, while generating sustainable competitive advantages for properties that embraced comprehensive social responsibility. Meanwhile, Marcus Sterling's situation continued deteriorating as the consequences of his previous behavior created mounting problems for his financial services practice. Several clients had begun questioning his judgment and professional competence after observing his unusual preoccupation with the Grand Meridian situation and his inability to adapt to changed circumstances that appeared to have minimal direct impact on his business operations. David Thompson's law firm concluded its annual review of service providers and decided to reduce its relationship with Marcus's firm, citing concerns about recent changes in leadership effectiveness and strategic focus that had affected the quality of financial advisory services. David's decision reflected observations that Marcus's emotional reactivity and poor judgment regarding the hotel situation had begun affecting his professional performance and client relationship management. The loss of David Thompson's firm as a client represented significant revenue reduction for Marcus's practice, while damaging his reputation within Chicago's legal community, where David's opinions carried substantial influence among potential clients who required sophisticated financial advisory services. The timing of this loss created additional pressure as Marcus simultaneously faced increasing personal expenses related to his divorce proceedings and establishment of independent living arrangements. Marcus's attempts to replace lost business through aggressive marketing and networking efforts met with limited success, as potential clients observed the same judgment and emotional stability concerns that had influenced existing clients to reduce their relationships with his firm. His reputation for analytical objectivity and strategic thinking, which had been essential for building his financial services practice, was being undermined by behavior that suggested personal problems were affecting his professional capabilities. Jessica Chen's relationship with Marcus also encountered increasing strain, as she recognized that her association with him was creating professional risks for her own career advancement within the investment banking industry. Jessica's superiors had begun questioning her judgment regarding client relationship management and business development activities, particularly her involvement in situations that appeared to compromise professional conduct standards and ethical business practices. The pressure Jessica experienced at work led to tension in her personal relationship with Marcus, as both parties realized that their affair had been facilitated by institutional arrangements and privileges that were no longer available under the enhanced accountability standards that had been implemented at venues where they had previously conducted both business and personal activities. The lifestyle they had envisioned together required access to exclusive services and accommodations that demanded professional credibility and ethical conduct that Marcus's recent behavior had undermined. The most significant development occurred when one of Marcus's largest clients, a family foundation that managed assets exceeding $50 million, requested a comprehensive review of their investment portfolio and advisory relationship following reports about Marcus's unprofessional behavior and questionable judgment regarding business relationships. The Foundation's board members had received information suggesting that Marcus's recent conduct raised questions about his suitability for managing assets that required fiduciary responsibility and ethical stewardship. The Foundation's decision to conduct this review represented a potential catastrophic loss for Marcus's practice, as the relationship generated substantial annual fees while providing credibility that helped attract additional high-net-worth clients. The review process would require Marcus to provide detailed documentation about his business practices and professional conduct standards, creating opportunities for discovery of activities that might not withstand scrutiny under appropriate fiduciary standards. The irony of Marcus's situation became increasingly apparent as his attempts to restore his previous privileges and influence continued generating additional problems and professional consequences. His inability to accept that institutional policies and business relationships had changed reflected a fundamental misunderstanding of how success and influence operate in environments that prioritize accountability and transparency over personal connections and informal arrangements. The contrast between Marcus's declining professional position and my expanding business relationships demonstrated the difference between achievement based on authentic capability versus success derived from manipulation of systems and relationships that lacked appropriate oversight and accountability. The hotel chain that had enabled Marcus's questionable activities was now operating according to principles that made such behavior impossible, while providing a platform for building business practices that created genuine value for all stakeholders. As the week concluded, the partnership agreements with Reynolds International had been finalized, and the Heritage Inn acquisition was proceeding toward closing, establishing the foundation for Grand Meridian expansion that would create new standards for socially responsible hospitality development. The success of these initiatives would demonstrate that business growth could be achieved through approaches that prioritized community benefit and environmental stewardship, while generating attractive returns for investors who valued both financial performance and positive social impact. The transformation that had begun with Marcus's betrayal and abandonment was now generating opportunities that extended far beyond personal vindication to encompass broader contributions to industry practices and community development. The woman, who had been dismissed as powerless and dependent, was emerging as a business leader whose vision and capabilities were creating new models for responsible enterprise development that served multiple stakeholder interests rather than simply maximizing short-term profits for wealthy individuals. The Heritage Inn acquisition closed on a crisp October morning in Madison, Wisconsin, marking a watershed moment that established the Grand Meridian as a transformative force within the hospitality industry. The ceremony took place in the hotel's historic ballroom, where community leaders, business partners, and media representatives gathered to witness the beginning of what would become a new model for socially responsible hotel development and operation. Thomas Reynolds delivered opening remarks that emphasized the significance of this transaction beyond its immediate financial implications, explaining that the partnership between Reynolds International Development and Grand Meridian represented a fundamental shift toward hospitality management that prioritized community engagement and environmental stewardship alongside operational excellence and financial performance. His analysis positioned the acquisition as a demonstration project that could influence industry standards and practices throughout North America. The presentation I delivered during the ceremony outlined the comprehensive renovation and operational improvement plans that would transform the Heritage Inn from a struggling property into a flagship demonstration of sustainable hospitality practices. The initiative would create employment opportunities for local residents while supporting regional suppliers and contractors, generating economic multiplier effects that would benefit the broader Madison community while establishing the hotel as a preferred destination for both business and leisure travelers. The renovation project would incorporate advanced environmental technologies and sustainable design principles that would reduce energy consumption by 40% while improving guest comfort and operational efficiency. These improvements would demonstrate that environmental responsibility and operational excellence could be achieved simultaneously, creating competitive advantages while advancing broader objectives regarding climate change mitigation and resource conservation. Dr. Patricia Williams presented the staff development and training programs that would empower local employees to provide exceptional customer service while building careers that offered advancement opportunities and professional growth within the expanding Grand Meridian organization. These programs emphasized skills development and leadership training that would enable staff members to take increasing responsibility for operational excellence and customer satisfaction while contributing to the hotel's community engagement initiatives. The training approach reflected recognition that sustainable business success required investment in human capital development and employee empowerment, rather than cost minimization strategies that treated workers as expendable resources. The Grand Meridian model demonstrated that superior service quality emerged from engaged and empowered staff members who understood their contributions to both customer satisfaction and community development objectives. Sarah Mitchell outlined the construction and renovation timeline that would upgrade facilities while preserving the hotel's historic character and architectural significance. The project would provide opportunities for minority-owned businesses and local contractors while incorporating sustainable building materials and energy-efficient systems that would reduce environmental impact while creating superior guest experiences and operational cost savings. The renovation approach balanced historic preservation with modern functionality, ensuring that the Heritage Inn would maintain its unique character while providing contemporary amenities and accessibility features that would serve diverse customer needs and comply with current regulatory standards. This integration of preservation and improvement would create a distinctive property that attracted guests seeking authentic experiences while meeting contemporary expectations for comfort and convenience. Elena Rodriguez described the community partnership initiatives that would establish the Heritage Inn as a civic resource, rather than simply a commercial enterprise that served external visitors. These programs would include meeting facilities for local organizations, support for small business development, and collaboration with the University of Wisconsin on research projects and educational programs that would benefit both the hotel and the broader community. The community engagement strategy recognized that long-term business success required positive relationships with local stakeholders and genuine contributions to regional development objectives. The Heritage Inn would serve as a hub for business, activity and cultural events that would generate positive economic impact while building customer loyalty and community support that would sustain the hotel's market position and operational success. The ceremony concluded with the signing of partnership agreements that would support similar acquisitions and renovations throughout the Midwest region, establishing a pipeline of development projects that would demonstrate the scalability of the Grand Meridian's socially responsible hospitality model. These commitments provided credibility for future fundraising activities, while creating momentum for broader industry transformation toward sustainable and community-focused business practices. The media coverage of the Heritage Inn acquisition generated substantial attention within the hospitality industry, with trade publications highlighting the innovative approach to hotel development that integrated financial performance with environmental stewardship and community benefit. The articles emphasized that the Grand Meridian model represented a viable alternative to conventional hospitality development strategies that prioritized short-term profit maximization over sustainable value creation for multiple stakeholders. Hospitality Business Magazine published a comprehensive analysis of the acquisition that positioned the Grand Meridian approach as a response to changing consumer preferences and regulatory environments that were creating opportunities for companies willing to embrace comprehensive social responsibility. The article noted that younger travelers and corporate clients increasingly preferred accommodations that reflected their values regarding environmental protection and community development, creating market demand for the services and experiences that the Grand Meridian model provided. The recognition generated by this coverage led to invitations for speaking engagements at industry conferences and academic institutions, where I could share insights about sustainable hospitality development and socially responsible business practices. These opportunities would provide platforms for advancing the principles and approaches that had driven the Grand Meridian's success, while building relationships with other business leaders who shared similar values and objectives. The first speaking engagement took place at the Chicago Hospitality Summit, where over 500 industry professionals gathered to discuss emerging trends and best practices in hotel development and management. The presentation I delivered focused on the business case for integrating social responsibility with operational excellence, demonstrating that sustainable practices could generate superior financial returns while creating positive community impact. The audience response revealed significant interest in the practical implementation strategies that had enabled the Grand Meridian's transformation from a conventional luxury hotel into a model for responsible hospitality development. The questions and discussions following the presentation indicated that many industry professionals recognized the need for new approaches but lacked specific guidance about how to implement changes while maintaining operational effectiveness and financial performance. The networking opportunities created through this speaking engagement led to conversations with hotel owners and management companies who expressed interest in adopting similar approaches within their own properties and organizations. These discussions revealed that the Grand Meridian's success had created market demand for consulting services and partnership opportunities that could accelerate the adoption of sustainable hospitality practices throughout the industry. Dr. Amanda Foster arranged an introduction to Professor Robert Chen at Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management, who had been researching sustainable business models and their applications within service industries. Professor Chen expressed interest in developing a case study based on the Grand Meridian's transformation and expansion strategy, which would provide academic validation for the approaches while creating educational materials that could influence future business leaders. The collaboration with Professor Chen would involve comprehensive documentation of the strategic thinking and implementation processes that had enabled the Grand Meridian's success, creating resources that could be used in business school curricula and executive education programs. This academic partnership would enhance the credibility of the Grand Meridian model, while contributing to broader understanding of how sustainable business practices could be implemented effectively within competitive industries. The case study development process required detailed analysis of financial performance data, operational metrics, and stakeholder feedback that demonstrated the measurable benefits of the Grand Meridian's approach. Professor Chen's research confirmed that the hotel's enhanced service quality and community engagement had generated customer loyalty and positive reputation that translated into superior occupancy rates and revenue performance compared to comparable properties in similar markets. Meanwhile, Marcus Sterling's professional situation continued deteriorating as the consequences of his behavior created mounting challenges for his financial advisory practice. The family foundation that had initiated a comprehensive review of their relationship with his firm ultimately decided to terminate their advisory agreement, citing concerns about judgment and professional conduct that raised questions about his suitability for managing fiduciary assets. The loss of this major client represented a devastating blow to Marcus's practice, eliminating approximately 30% of his annual revenue, while damaging his reputation within Chicago's philanthropic community, where foundation board members shared information about service provider performance and reliability. The termination also triggered contractual provisions that required immediate repayment of advance fees, creating cash flow problems that affected his ability to maintain office operations and staff compensation. Marcus's attempts to replace the lost revenue through aggressive business development efforts met with limited success, as potential clients had received information about his recent professional difficulties and personal conduct issues. The network of referral sources that had previously provided steady client acquisition opportunities had become reluctant to recommend his services due to concerns about his emotional stability and judgment regarding business relationships. The stress of these mounting professional challenges began affecting Marcus's relationship with Jessica Chen. as both parties recognized that their personal association was creating additional risks for their respective career advancement opportunities. Jessica's superiors at the investment bank had expressed concerns about her involvement with someone whose professional reputation was becoming a liability for client relationship management and business development activities. Jessica's decision to reduce her personal relationship with Marcus reflected her recognition that her own career objectives required professional associations that enhanced rather than compromised her credibility within the investment banking industry. Her withdrawal of support created additional emotional pressure for Marcus, while eliminating one of his remaining connections to the social and professional networks that had previously sustained his business development efforts. The most significant challenge Marcus faced involved responding to regulatory inquiries that had emerged from complaints filed by former clients who questioned the appropriateness of investment recommendations and fee structures that had been implemented during periods when his judgment appeared to be compromised by personal problems. These investigations required substantial legal expenses while consuming time and attention that diverted resources from business development and client service activities. The regulatory scrutiny created additional reputational damage within Chicago's financial services community, where compliance issues and regulatory problems were considered serious impediments to professional credibility and client trust. The investigations also generated publicity within industry publications that monitor regulatory enforcement activities, further damaging Marcus's reputation and market position. The contrast between Marcus's declining professional position and my expanding industry recognition illustrated the fundamental differences between success based on authentic capability and achievement, derived from manipulation of relationships and systems that lacked appropriate accountability. The hotel acquisition and renovation projects demonstrated that principled business practices could generate both financial success and positive social impact while building sustainable competitive advantages. The Heritage Inn renovation proceeded ahead of schedule and under budget, with construction teams achieving efficiency improvements and cost savings through innovative project management approaches and collaborative relationships with suppliers and subcontractors. The superior performance reflected the positive working environment and shared commitment to excellence that characterized all aspects of the Grand Meridian's operations and business relationships. The preliminary results from guest satisfaction surveys at the renovated Heritage Inn exceeded expectations, with travelers expressing appreciation for the combination of historic character and modern amenities while noting the exceptional service, quality, and community connections that differentiated the property from conventional hotel offerings. These positive reviews generated word-of-mouth marketing that supported occupancy growth while validating the Grand Meridian's strategic positioning. As October concluded, the success of the Heritage Inn acquisition had established clear momentum for the Grand Meridian's expansion strategy, while demonstrating the viability of sustainable hospitality development as both a business model and a catalyst for positive community impact. The recognition within industry and academic circles provided credibility for future development projects, while creating opportunities for broader influence on hospitality industry practices and standards. The transformation that had begun with Marcus's betrayal and abandonment had evolved into a comprehensive demonstration of how authentic leadership and principled business practices could create value for multiple stakeholders while building sustainable competitive advantages. The woman who had been dismissed as powerless had become a recognized industry leader whose vision and capabilities were influencing business practices and educational curricula while generating superior financial returns for investors who shared her commitment to social responsibility and environmental stewardship. The invitation to deliver the keynote address at the International Sustainable Hospitality Conference represented recognition that extended far beyond my individual achievements to encompass the broader transformation occurring within the industry. As stakeholders increasingly demanded accountability regarding environmental stewardship and community engagement, the conference would convene over 2,000 hospitality professionals from 37 countries, providing an unprecedented platform for advancing the principles and practices that had driven the Grand Meridian's success while building relationships with global leaders who shared similar commitments to responsible business development. The preparation for this keynote required comprehensive analysis of how the Grand Meridian model could be adapted to diverse cultural contexts and regulatory environments, while maintaining the core principles that had generated superior performance across multiple metrics. The presentation would need to demonstrate that sustainable hospitality practices represented viable business strategies rather than costly philanthropic gestures, providing concrete evidence that environmental responsibility and community engagement could enhance rather than compromise financial performance. Professor Robert Chen's case study research provided essential data supporting the business case for sustainable hospitality development, demonstrating that the Grand Meridian's approach had generated measurable improvements in guest satisfaction, employee retention, operational efficiency, and financial performance compared to comparable properties utilizing conventional management strategies. These quantitative results would counter skepticism from industry professionals who remained concerned about the cost implications of implementing comprehensive social responsibility programs. The analysis revealed that the Grand Meridian's enhanced service quality and community engagement had generated customer loyalty rates exceeding industry averages by 35%, while reducing marketing costs through positive word-of-mouth recommendations and repeat visitation patterns. The operational improvements had created efficiency gains that offset the initial investment in staff training and facility upgrades, while establishing competitive advantages that would be difficult for competitors to replicate quickly. Dr. Patricia Williams collaborated on developing implementation frameworks that could guide other hospitality organizations through the transformation process, while adapting to their specific operational contexts and market conditions. These frameworks emphasized systematic approaches to organizational change that would maintain service quality during transition periods while building capabilities necessary for long-term success under enhanced social responsibility standards. The implementation guidance addressed common challenges that hospitality organizations encountered when attempting to integrate environmental stewardship and community engagement with existing operational procedures and performance metrics. The frameworks provided practical solutions for overcoming resistance to change, while building stakeholder support for new approaches that required initial investment in order to generate long-term benefits. Sarah Mitchell contributed insights about sustainable construction and renovation practices that could be implemented cost-effectively within existing properties while creating measurable improvements in environmental performance and guest satisfaction. Her analysis demonstrated that strategic facility improvements could generate both immediate operational savings and long-term competitive advantages while supporting broader community development objectives through local supplier partnerships and employment creation. The construction expertise Sarah provided would enable other hospitality organizations to pursue similar renovation projects, with confidence that the investments would generate positive returns while advancing environmental and community objectives. Her network of certified minority contractors and sustainable building suppliers offered resources that could support industry-wide adoption of responsible development practices. Elena Rodriguez developed community engagement strategies that could be customized for different geographic markets and cultural contexts, while maintaining consistent principles regarding stakeholder involvement and mutual benefit creation. Her frameworks emphasized authentic partnership development rather than superficial corporate social responsibility programs that generated minimal impact while consuming substantial resources without creating meaningful community value. The community engagement approaches Elena outlined recognized that effective stakeholder relationships required ongoing commitment and genuine responsiveness to local needs and priorities, rather than predetermined programs that reflected corporate objectives without considering community input and feedback. These strategies would enable hospitality organizations to build sustainable competitive advantages through positive community relationships while contributing to regional economic development and social cohesion. The keynote presentation at the International Sustainable Hospitality Conference generated substantial attention from industry media and professional organizations, with coverage emphasizing the practical applicability of the Grand Meridian model across diverse market contexts and organizational structures. The presentation demonstrated that sustainable hospitality practices could be implemented successfully by organizations of various sizes and financial capabilities, while generating measurable benefits for all stakeholders involved. The audience response included numerous requests for consulting services and partnership opportunities from hospitality organizations seeking guidance about implementing similar transformation initiatives within their own properties and markets. These inquiries represented potential revenue streams that could support continued expansion of the Grand Meridian, while advancing broader industry adoption of responsible business practices through knowledge transfer and collaborative development. Projects. The networking opportunities created through the conference led to introductions with international investors and development partners who shared commitments to sustainable business practices while possessing resources and expertise that could support global expansion of the Grand Meridian brand. These relationships would enable exploration of international markets where responsible hospitality development could generate both financial returns and positive social impact while adapting to local cultural contexts and regulatory requirements. Dr. Amanda Foster facilitated meetings with institutional investors from European and Asian markets who had been seeking opportunities to support sustainable hospitality development through direct investment and strategic partnerships. These investors represented pension funds and endowments that required both competitive financial returns and demonstrated positive social impact in order to satisfy fiduciary obligations and stakeholder expectations regarding responsible investment practices. The international investor interest validated the global applicability of the Grand Meridian model, while providing access to capital resources that could support larger-scale development projects and market expansion initiatives. The investors expressed particular interest in the comprehensive measurement and reporting systems that documented both financial performance and social impact outcomes, enabling them to demonstrate accountability to beneficiaries and regulatory authorities regarding investment decision criteria and performance evaluation. Thomas Reynolds expanded the partnership agreement between Reynolds International Development and Grand Meridian to include international project development and management services, creating opportunities for pursuing acquisition and renovation projects in markets where sustainable hospitality development could support broader economic development and tourism industry growth objectives. The expanded partnership would leverage Reynolds International's global network and development expertise while maintaining Grand Meridian's operational control and strategic direction. The international expansion strategy required adaptation of operational procedures and service standards to accommodate diverse cultural expectations and regulatory requirements, while preserving the core principles that had generated success in North American markets. This adaptation process would provide opportunities for organizational learning and capability development while demonstrating the flexibility and resilience of the Grand Meridian's business model. Meanwhile, Marcus Sterling faced increasingly serious consequences as regulatory investigations revealed patterns of questionable business practices that had occurred during periods when his personal problems appeared to be affecting his professional judgment and client service quality. The Securities and Exchange Commission initiated formal enforcement proceedings based on complaints regarding investment recommendations that appeared to prioritize commission generation over client interest alignment and fiduciary responsibility requirements. The SEC investigation discovered documentation indicating that Marcus had recommended investment products that generated higher fees for his firm, while providing inferior returns and increased risk exposure for clients who had specifically requested conservative investment strategies aligned with their retirement planning and capital preservation objectives. These recommendations appeared to violate fiduciary duty requirements and professional conduct standards that governed investment advisory relationships. The enforcement proceedings would require Marcus to retain specialized legal counsel while potentially facing financial penalties and professional sanctions that could include suspension or revocation of his investment advisory registration. The legal expenses and potential penalties represented substantial financial obligations that would further strain his firm's resources while eliminating his ability to conduct business activities that generated revenue necessary for meeting operational expenses and debt obligations. The publicity surrounding the SEC investigation created additional reputational damage within Chicago's financial services community, where regulatory enforcement actions were considered serious indicators of professional competence and ethical conduct problems. The investigation also generated coverage in industry publications that monitored regulatory activities, further reducing Marcus's ability to attract new clients or maintain existing business relationships. Marcus's law firm representation required disclosure of the investigation to existing clients and business partners, creating additional pressure for relationship termination and asset withdrawal that would accelerate the decline of his business operations. The disclosure requirements also affected his ability to pursue new business opportunities, as potential clients typically avoided advisors who were subject to active regulatory investigation or enforcement proceedings. The stress of these mounting professional and legal challenges began affecting Marcus's health and personal relationships, as the combination of financial pressure, reputational damage, and potential criminal liability created overwhelming anxiety and depression that required medical attention and psychological counseling. The personal costs of his previous behavior were becoming apparent, as the consequences extended beyond professional sanctions to encompass physical and emotional well-being concerns. Jessica Chen made the decision to terminate her personal relationship with Marcus completely, recognizing that continued association would create additional risks for her own career advancement within the investment banking industry. Her decision reflected advice from senior colleagues who emphasized that professional success required careful management of personal associations and avoidance of situations that could compromise credibility or create potential conflicts of interest. The loss of Jessica's support eliminated one of Marcus's remaining emotional anchors while creating additional isolation and stress during a period when he faced unprecedented professional and legal challenges. The relationship that had motivated his betrayal of our marriage had proven unsustainable under pressure, leaving him without either the stability of our previous partnership or the excitement of his anticipated new life with Jessica. The contrast between Marcus's deteriorating situation and my expanding professional recognition illustrated fundamental principles regarding the sustainability of success based on authentic capability versus achievement derived from manipulation and privilege. The Grand Meridian's growth demonstrated that principled business practices could create lasting competitive advantages while generating positive stakeholder outcomes that supported continued expansion and market leadership. The academic recognition of the Grand Meridian model extended beyond Professor Chen's case study to include research collaboration with business schools at Harvard University, Stanford University, and the Wharton School, where faculty members were developing curriculum materials and research projects focused on sustainable business practices and stakeholder capitalism applications within service industries. These academic partnerships provided opportunities for ongoing research and development regarding best practices in sustainable hospitality management, while creating pipelines for recruiting talented graduates who shared commitments to responsible business practices and social impact creation. The university relationships also offered access to research resources and analytical capabilities that could support continued innovation and improvement within the Grand Meridian's operational and strategic approaches. The Harvard Business School invitation to participate in their annual Social Enterprise Conference represented recognition that the Grand Meridian model bridged traditional business performance metrics with social impact measurement in ways that could influence broader understanding of stakeholder capitalism applications and sustainable business model development. The conference would provide opportunities for collaboration with other business leaders who were developing innovative approaches to creating shared value for multiple stakeholder groups. As November progressed, The momentum generated by the international conference presentation and expanding academic recognition created demand for additional speaking engagements and consulting opportunities that would require careful prioritization to ensure continued focus on operational excellence and strategic expansion within the Grand Meridian's core hospitality business. The balance between thought leadership activities and business development would be essential for maintaining the authentic foundation that had generated credibility and recognition within industry and academic circles. The success of the Heritage Inn renovation and the positive reception of the sustainable hospitality model demonstrated that the transformation initiated by Marcus's betrayal had evolved into a comprehensive demonstration of how authentic leadership and principled business practices could create value that extended far beyond individual financial success to encompass industry influence and social impact. The woman who had been abandoned and dismissed had become a recognized leader whose vision and capabilities were shaping business education and industry practices while generating superior returns for stakeholders who shared her commitment to responsible enterprise development. The opportunity to establish Grand Meridian's first international presence emerged through connections developed at the Sustainable Hospitality Conference, where representatives from the European Hotel Investment Partnership had expressed interest in bringing responsible hospitality practices to markets experiencing rapid economic development. The partnership proposal involved acquiring and renovating 3 historically significant properties in emerging Eastern European markets, where tourism infrastructure required substantial improvement while local communities needed employment opportunities and economic development support. The initial assessment trip to Prague, Czech Republic, revealed exceptional potential for implementing the Grand Meridian model within a cultural context that valued historical preservation and environmental stewardship while seeking modern business practices that could support European Union integration objectives. The target property, the Imperial Palace Hotel, possessed architectural significance and optimal location within the historic city center, but required comprehensive renovation and management transformation to achieve contemporary service standards and operational efficiency. The financial structure for the Prague acquisition required coordination between multiple international funding sources, including European development banks focused on sustainable tourism infrastructure, Czech government economic development programs, and private investors committed to responsible business practices. The complexity of these arrangements demanded sophisticated understanding of international finance and regulatory compliance, while maintaining the transparency and stakeholder accountability that characterized all Grand Meridian operations. Dr. Amanda Foster's institutional investor network provided essential expertise for structuring these international transactions, ensuring compliance with both United States investment regulations and European Union requirements governing foreign direct investment and tourism industry development. The collaboration between American and European financial institutions demonstrated the global applicability of sustainable business practices while creating precedents for future international expansion initiatives. Thomas Reynolds coordinated the due diligence process for the Prague acquisition, leveraging Reynolds International Development's European partnerships to conduct comprehensive assessments of property conditions, market opportunities, and regulatory requirements. The analysis confirmed that the Imperial Palace Hotel represented exceptional value while providing opportunities for demonstrating sustainable renovation practices and community engagement strategies within Eastern European markets experiencing rapid tourism growth. The renovation plans developed for the Imperial Palace Hotel incorporated advanced environmental technologies and sustainable design principles, while preserving historical architectural features that reflected Czech cultural heritage and artistic traditions. The project would demonstrate that environmental responsibility and historical preservation could be achieved simultaneously while creating contemporary amenities and accessibility features that would serve diverse international clientele. Sarah Mitchell expanded her consulting role to coordinate with European architects and contractors who specialized in sustainable renovation of historic properties, ensuring that the Prague project would meet both international environmental standards and local cultural preservation requirements. The collaboration between American and European expertise would create knowledge transfer opportunities while building relationships that could support additional international projects throughout the region. The construction management approach emphasized partnership with local suppliers and contractors, creating employment opportunities for Czech workers while supporting regional economic development through procurement of materials and services from community-based businesses. These practices would demonstrate that international business development could generate positive local impact while achieving superior project outcomes through authentic stakeholder engagement and cultural sensitivity. Elena Rodriguez developed community partnership strategies specifically adapted for the Prague market, working with local economic development organizations and cultural institutions to ensure that the Imperial Palace Hotel would contribute meaningfully to tourism promotion and community cultural programming. The partnerships would create additional revenue opportunities while building stakeholder relationships that would support long-term operational success and market positioning. The community engagement approach recognized that successful international business development required genuine understanding of local priorities and cultural contexts, rather than imposition of predetermined programs developed for different markets. The strategies Elena outlined would enable the Grand Meridian to build authentic relationships with Prague stakeholders while demonstrating respect for Czech cultural values and community development objectives. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.